Ang pag-ibig alinsunod sa pakete ng Tide Ultra in line with the new criticism approach. New critics endeavored to arrange the investigation of writing and building up a methodology that was fixated on thorough investigation of the content itself. Hence, it was unmistakably formalist in character, zeroing in on the literary parts of the content, for example, rhythm, meter, imagery, and metaphor, by the method of close reading, as against reading that on the basis of external pieces of evidences such as the history, author's biography, or the socio-political or cultural conditions of the text's production. Aside from that, working with patterns of sound, imagery, narrative structure, point of view, and other techniques discernible on close reading of the text, they seek to determine the function and appropriateness of these to the self-contained work. For much of the previous century, traditional criticism was in large part synonymous with what has become known as new criticism. This way of looking at literature began to emerge clearly in the 1920s and dominated literary criticism from the late 1930s into the 1960s. In 1941, John Crowe Ransom's The New Criticism gave this movement its name. As per the poem, there's one way to get at these principles and begin to see why they have remained so appealing. Might be to look at the famous poem written about love that new criticism was emerging as a critical force. This poem is particularly interesting because it is about love, attempting to define it, advising us how to cope and view it when it comes to hard times. Ang pag-ibig alinsunod sa pakete ng Tide Ultra has the primacy of the text as an autotelic artifact, complete inside itself. It was composed for the good of its own, brought together in good structure and not subject to its connection to the creator's goal or history, and so forth. Such a text is to be read by the technique of close reading, which would reveal that its formal aspects serve to support the structure of meaning within the text. The poem also has a lot of metaphor. It is brief or extended comparison of a thing with something else. Aside from that, the author used the imagery to describe characters, situations, things, ideas, or events. Assume that words are supposed to convey a meaning, transferring ideas from an author to a reader. In line with characterization, the creator uses himself as the person who encountered the agony. He simply needed to pass his emotions as strain he was battling with. The second character, we have the tide packet, which is the explanation of changes of the fundamental character. The third one is the water, that remains as the cleaner of the multitude of sentiments he has for his past relationship. The fourth is air, to revive and rejuvenate his head towards the past. In line with problems and themes, the poem has a lot of problems and issues in the topic. The first problem indicates that the poem has poor emotional health management, from the line, "Kunin sa timba ang damdaming matagal nang ibinabad." It talks about the pool of feelings that has been soaked for a long time. Sometimes, emotions are unreachable. It takes effort to deal with mental health problems. The word kunin means just to be conscious about a feeling he's been hiding, which is the image of timba as the metaphor. And the line matagal nang ibinabad is that he's been hiding it for a long time. Aside from that, another problem is regret and miscellaneous emotions, from the line, "Kusutin ng mabuti, pabulain, pabulain, upang matayak na natatapakan na ng bula ang mga salitang noon pa sana sinabi." This line shows that the author regrets too much on the chances he ignored and for keeping quiet about his feelings towards his lover. The line, "Kusutin ng mabuti, pabulain, pabulain, upang matayak na natatapakan na ng bula," means making assurance to hide those wasted chance until it's gone. The line, "Ang salitang noon pa sana sinabi," are the feelings and dedication to tell what he really wanted to convey. In line with scenarios from the poem, the line, "Ayaw kong maglaba sa gabi. Hindi ko alam kung bakit siguro'y ayaw kong makitang nakasungaw ang bituin sa ulap at pinapanood ang bawat kong kusot," where the character of the story has hesitation to open up things and share what he's been going through. The second scenario from the poem, "Pero hindi kagabi, ang totoo, naglaba ako." He just decided to open and tell his message through the words naglaba. While one of the scenario, kunin sa timba ang damdaming matagal nang ibinabad, where the character needs to get all the emotions, feelings, and love he is hiding from the past and try to be reminiscing about it through the symbol and imagery of timba. Aside from that, kusutin ng mabuti, pabulain pa upang matiyak na natatapakan na ng bula ang mga salitang noon pa sana sinabi. Scene where the character talks about a lot of emotions and feelings that he failed to convey and lost dedication to make it true. In addition to that, from the line, "At dahil nahuli na sa sikat ng araw na siyang pagkukulahan, lagyan na lamang ng Clorox upang kumupas at walang makakita sa mantsa ni Eros." A scene where he just lost his chance and wanted to make things clear and bitter, so he decided to make things light and move on. The line, "At dahil nahuli na sa sikat ng araw na siyang pagkukulahan, lagyan na lamang ng Clorox upang kumupas at walang makakita sa mantsa ni Eros." And, ibuhos sa kanal ang tubig upang makapagtago sa burak ang mga pagsinta. New critics believe that the structure and meaning of the text were intimately connected and should not be analyzed separately. New criticism, in simple terms, is a critical movement that propagates the idea of art for art's sake. It has its own beauty. The two lines has its own meter theme, which is free where the imagery is being shown. The metaphor has its own unique and good description. The author used laundry steps as unique pattern and system to the poem. Aside from that, the author used a lot of metaphor and imagery to connect to the topic, which is about love, regrets, and sorrow that can be relatable to the readers. In symbolism, the poem has 4 imagery where it was a precise and right decision. For the primary imagery, the myth or garments, it symbolizes the sentiments and feelings towards a particular individual. Besides that, a pocket of tide represents his guidance, bearings, and the passage that leads the character to move forward and be free from the past. The air additionally represents the chill, invigorate, and renew his head towards the past. The last is the water that represents as the cleaner to wash away his true feelings. The poem Ang Pag-ibig Alinsunod sa Pakete ng Tide Ultra, in line with New Criticism approach, has a lot of information where imagery, metaphor, and language use and structure have a strong connection that shouldn't be analyzed separately. The author used imagery and metaphor in the poem to describe what he truly feels. In addition to that, the language used in this poem is Filipino because the target audience can easily convey what the author was trying to say. The structure of the poem is unique as well as the design pattern, which is the laundry steps. It has a very strong topic, which is love, that everyone else might find interesting, especially if it is about heartbreaking. New criticism also believe that they demand readers to read, to pay attention on what was on the poem, to the works and art, rather than the author itself.